Hey everyone, this is Jack with It Takes Guts. With the new release of the Vinland Saga Deluxe editions, I decided to finally pick it up and give it a read. So far, I am having just a fantastic time with this story, and I wanted to kind of break down a little bit of what I've seen so far. I'm still relatively early on into the manga, just about chapter 6, but wanted to kind of give early thoughts and also talk about some of the themes that I've started to see develop here. In terms of the deluxe edition, I cannot say enough about it. Absolutely fantastic quality, very comparable to the Berserk Deluxe editions, and I really do think this is one of the best ways to kind of consume Vinland Saga. But I'm a little bit worried because the first two books are a really nice crimson red, but on Amazon the next two are showing as black, so I'm not sure how that kind of color switch will look on a bookshelf, but I'll keep you updated on that and let you know how it is when the third book releases in a couple of months here. But I do plan to continue kind of stopping by as I go through the story and giving you all updates, talking about how I've seen the story develop. So, with no further introduction, I'm going to get right into it and discuss my initial thoughts on Vinland Saga. As Hadi followed Mani, Vinland Saga has been trailing behind me on my manga anime journey for the past couple of years. The prospect of a deeply enriched world filled with whispers of Jormungandr and the Viking conquest was incredibly enticing. Having an established passion for Norse mythology, Vinland Saga was always on top of my list for viewing. Despite the praise I heard for the anime, One Piece always stood as a bastion keeping me from entering this Nordic world. I always knew when my journey with the Straw Hats ended, a new adventure waited for me. With the release of the deluxe edition, I decided to read rather than watch. Somehow, I have been able to avoid any kind of spoilers, and I'm going into this series completely blind to the narrative and the characters' fates. Today, I want to discuss my initial reactions to the first 6 chapters, touching on the themes that I've begun to recognize thus far. I will be checking in with you all throughout my time with Yukimura's story, further exploring the themes and plot developments along the way. Our story starts with a stalled siege and a bystanding troop akin to vultures aiming to join the fray to reap the rewards. Our protagonist, Thorfinn, is sent to the besieging army to negotiate an alliance in order to break the defenses of the port. With an agreement set, Askeladd and his men carry their drake ships across the land to encircle that port. Thorfinn has his own interests outside of the impending loot, as Askeladd offered a prize for taking the leader of the defending army's head. This reward? To fight Askeladd in a one-on-one duel in order to avenge Thorfinn's father's death. Yukimura's art direction and paneling made it relatively easy to follow this somewhat complicated battle layout, and our hero's frenzied combat style really shined. Desperation for vengeance was apparent in every swing of the blade, and this desperation was actually Thorfinn's downfall when receiving his reward for obtaining the head. Askeladd ultimately bests our young champion by inciting his berserker-esque rage through taunting and pretending to not even remember who Thor's, the aforementioned father, was. This duel was incredibly important towards one of the major themes I've noticed thus far, but I'll get into that momentarily. After Askeladd's triumph, we are treated with a flashback to Thorfinn's youth. We see the humble, peaceful Icelandic origins and hear stories of a pastoral Vinland through the tales of Leif Erikson. Whether Vinland is a representation of Valhalla or a real place awaiting them in this realm of Yggdrasil is yet to be revealed. Thor's, once a great Viking warrior, came to Iceland after deserting the battlefield with hopes of leading a peaceful life with his family. Naturally, the shadows of mankind are impossible to avoid. We see Thor's offer a great deal of capital in order to give a runaway slave a proper burial. This noble act does not secure peace for long though, as a Viking troop docks quickly after these events and Thor's is forced to pick up the blade once more against the attack of the Englishmen. This is where chapter 6 ends, and in the next few chapters we will potentially witness the battle between Askeladd and Thor's. I'm excited to keep reading and see what happens next, but I wanted to stop there and discuss what I think of some of the themes that I've noticed so far. One of my favorite elements of the Norse Edda is the interconnectivity of cultural mythos. Christianity can be a prominent aspect of Norse literature, often posing the old gods versus the new. As Christianity continued to spread, worship of the traditional Norse gods became more obscure as time passed. If you're interested in this ethereal power struggle, I highly recommend Paul Anderson's book, The Broken Blade. We even see this invasion of Christianity through the ensuing war, as the Englishmen will surely bring Bibles along with their swords and bows into these northern lands. Leif Erikson discusses leaving to trade for wine before the winter sets for the purpose of communion, displaying how Christianity has already begun permeating throughout these lands. I'm excited to see how these themes develop throughout the course of the manga, and I just wanted to note this aspect right away. However, the old ways have not been replaced yet, and the influences of Odin are still the norm at this point of the narrative. This is seen during an ingenious page spread that juxtaposes a fatal raid with kids playing war. Side by side, we see the real brutality of warfare as well as the immature idea of the glory of battle. This dichotomy is further shown when Thor reveals that they will be setting out to fend off the Englishmen. Those of the village jump in joy, while we see Thor standing among them with the shadow-casted face. There is clearly a disconnect between the villagers' perception of war and the real thing. I think these misconceptions are expressed well during a conversation between Thorfinn and Faxi. While laying there playing dead on the battlefield, Thorfinn notes how Faxi is always the first to die. Faxi responds by saying, "Well, the Valkyries come if you die in the field of battle. Then I can go to Valhalla and feast on meat every day." After Thorfinn rebuttals that only powerful warriors are led into Valhalla, Faxi ponders that his mother and sister might not be able to make it in. In my opinion, this is an incredibly poignant and ubiquitous concept being explored here. This concept really transcends the manga, as many people of different faiths across the world deal with anxieties of their loved ones not making it into their equivalent of Valhalla. Furthering the theme of religious intersectionality, this conversation reveals that those jumping for joy at the prospect of setting sail for war will have a really rude awakening once metal begins clashing. Another theme that I really wanted to discuss today is that of freedom. Freedom is a common theme in contemporary manga, but Vinland Saga has already deeply set thematic resonances regarding this idea as it impacts every single character established so far. Every character is depicted as being a slave to something. Aside from the literal slave that escaped and was granted a true burial, we see that Askeladd's uncle is a slave to gold, Thor's is a slave to moral justice, Halfdan is a slave to the law, and so on. Chains are the only neckwear that truly suits a human being. Not gold, not silver, cold iron chains. Only a chain of hard iron around the neck can turn a man into something better. Halfdan announces this to the village when coming to collect the escaped slave. To his own world perspective, Halfdan himself is a slave. He later breaks up a fight and declares that "I will not tolerate insults to the law. The law is a chain. Only when he is chained does a savage become a man." According to him, a man's binding to something is what gives them their identity. Through these bindings, people become predictable. The only person who is shown to recognize and weaponize this is Askeladd. He is able to keep our protagonist chained by his need to avenge his father, but he also knows that Thorfinn would not simply kill him. Thorfinn is also bound by moral justice, similar to his father. To quote Askeladd, Thorfinn won't be satisfied unless he wins an honest man-to-man duel. He's bound by pride and his own past. According to Askeladd, every human can be controlled if you figure out what kind of chains they are shackled by. This makes him a fascinating villain in the story, and I can't wait to read on to see how the narrative develops. Through 6 chapters, I am left with just one question. What is Askeladd bound by?